over, Whitley.
Halloween, John Carpenter's slasher master... Wait a minute. Not here to talk about that today. They Live, John Carpenter's... Well, God damn it. Big Trouble in Little China, John Carpenter... The Thing, John Carpenter's sci-fi body horror masterpiece, being released the same year as E.T., but instead of being a lovable, wholesome turd, the alien in The Thing was an all-consuming amalgamation of flesh that could assimilate people with a touch, taking over their appearance and personality in the most gruesome way possible. It's often looked at as one of, if not the greatest sci-fi horror movies of all time. Now, as high of a regard as this movie is held in today, when it came out, it was pretty panned by critics. People were not happy that it came out in the same year as E.T. And many labeled it badly paced and just bad, such as this review from Roger Ebert. Well, Roger Ebert,
Fuck you too!
now what if I told you the movie's sequel is not another film, but an often overlooked old-gen game of the same name, and was actually sanctioned by John Carpenter as the sequel? That's what we're here to talk about today.
What the hell?
So I wanted to add this new segment to these videos, which provides a brief look into the development process of these games. Nothing too incredibly deep, but just kind of the cliff notes, you know? And I'd love for you guys to tell me what you think. I'm excited to do this one. The Thing had been chosen from Universal's massive catalog of movies to be released as a game adaptation for the next upcoming generation of consoles. The game was announced in 2000. Universal then invited Computer Artworks for their pitch. This was a studio that's catalog boasted the massive amount of titles, such as Evolva, The Thing, and yeah, that's it. That's really it. Anyway, the pitch was a reskin level of Evolva, and it seemed to impress Universal. Development then started January 16th, 2000, and a release date was slated for 2002. Originally, the game had been planned to be much more ambitious, boasting an open world with the trust-fear mechanic being much, much more important. Designer Andrew Curtis had stated that he wanted it to be possible you could make it to the end of the game with all NPCs alive. They instead opted to make Thing transformation scripted, and this proved to be a detriment later on. The game was released to mostly favorable reviews. It was mostly criticized for false promises, and the game mechanics weren't nearly as important as presented. The latter half of the game was also subject of criticism. This is foreshadowing. The studio went into production on a sequel after the first had good commercial success, but it didn't make it quite past the concept stage. That being said, the game has a planned remaster from the lovely folks at Night Dive Studios, who I would kiss each and every individual one of them. Now these devs go back and give old favorites a new coat of paint. And that's really all there is to this game's development. With that being said, let's get into The Thing.
What the hell?
The story is a direct sequel approved from John Carpenter, where you play as Captain Blake, who, honestly, it's like playing a stiff board. His character's cool, but not interesting, really, at all. I think your NPC companions say, like, vastly more lines than him, and they die every level, so, you know. Anyway, you pick off where The Thing, the movie, leaves off. You find Child's body, confirming he wasn't a thing in this continuity, and then you blow up the place. You then go find another squad after they go radio silent. Blake is like, no, I'm not going back to base, I'm gonna go find him. So he goes, and everything goes to hell, of course. You find a substation, a literal submarine station, that had been conducting experiments let me preface, it doesn't go any deeper than this. Like, they literally are just like, yep, we were conducting experiments. And this also goes to shit, by the way. As you're escaping with a Dr. Faraday, who's a cameo from John Carpenter, you're then captured by the game's villain, Whitley. Really? Not even Captain Whitley? Or first name Whitley? Now, I know he was the guy at the beginning of the game who you're radioing, but you really don't have an introduction to this guy other than him capturing you. So, you know, when it comes as a big shock that he's capturing you, you're like, okay. Anyway, Whitley has infected himself with the thing and deems it controllable. You're taken into his facility where he kills Faraday, and it's also revealed that Blake has a unique resilience to the creature. And of course, after things go to shit again, you escape, and as you continue your escape, you're learning small little details here and there on computers, such as that the thing is going to be used for biological warfare, and now, since Blake is about as charismatic as a steel washer, you don't hear any of this from him. He literally does not talk during the game at all. You have cutscenes where he's like, "Hey, buddy, help me out." Or, "Whitley, you're an asshole." So you don't really get any info conveyed to you. You destroy the shipments of cargo that have these thing bombs, which is like cloud something. And after an arduous and infuriating set of levels, we'll get there, don't worry, you confront Whitley. And he does the whole, "Hey dude, I'm evil messiah, rah! And like, I'm totally got this thing under control." You chase him down and his, "It's totally under control" thing is definitely not under control. He blows up into a giant thing, and you're picked up by a random helicopter. Now, if you see the guy's hat, you immediately know who this is. Anyway, you fly around Whit Thing, and you shoot these barrels. And it's actually a pretty cool segment. I will say it is definitely the most cinematic segment of the game. So you kill Whitley, and then it's revealed your pilot is MacReady! Hooray! Now, if you want to take the game story and the movie story separately, that's cool. If you want to combine them, that's also cool. You know, I think the story was pretty decent. I think it has a strong core that could work. I'm just not a fan of how it was conveyed. Blake is not interesting at all. I'm going to be completely honest. He's a board and really doesn't do anything. And I'm not a big fan of when this game switches over to the human enemy aspect. I just wish that sometimes on these horror games, it didn't always link back to people were doing an experiment and now you're fighting them. Maybe you could just fight the monster sometime. Maybe you could just fight the monster. That's just my 2 cents. But my biggest gripe with the story is they only ever refer to the thing as a virus. It's not. It's a creature. Like, it's a living creature. That's a small gripe, though, and just something that bugs me, I guess. But it is definitely a creature. Like, no doubt. That's how it's conveyed in the movie. And the movie is like the Bible for the Thing universe.
Game over, Whitley.
Now, gameplay is presented as deep upon starting, and I wrote that when I wrote my script initially. And then I read reviews and everybody else was agreeing, and I was like, wow, I'm not crazy. So, gameplay is presented as deep upon starting the game. I wasn't expecting the game to be a survival horror tactical shooter. You know, you give squad commands. It presents you with your squad having trust issues and making sure motherfuckers literally don't go insane. And then those two former mechanics don't really matter at all. Your squad only loses trust in you if you take their gun away or you shoot them on accident. But that's about it. And, you know, all characters turn into a thing. Like, they turn into a thing regardless if you just tested them. So it turns into less of, is he the thing? And more, when is he going to turn into the thing? That aside, this is a third-person shooter with auto-aim. There's a first-person shooter mode allowing for accurate shots, which is nice for specific situations. The game presents you with 5 different guns, all serving their own purposes. The shotgun is definitely the standout, though. But having to use the flame weapons against the thing beasts is fitting, but the flamethrower is a bit of a pain in the ass. And when you get to fighting humans, it's pretty standard for the most part. We'll talk about the random difficulty spikes later. Though the camera in this game is very primitive compared to now, it doesn't take that long to get used to. The gameplay does not feel really stiff. It has a decent enough enemy variety. Again, my biggest complaint is the 2 mechanics mentioned at the start of the segment are essentially useless. They essentially become useless. A good stress mechanic and a good trust and fear mechanic could have been an amazing element if fleshed out more. And I know that they had the idea on hand. It just was not carried through to the end. I think one of the mechanics that does do well in the first few levels is the "it's chilly out" mechanic. But overall, I think gameplay is pretty standard. There's nothing really crazy or bad about it. I will say your NPC comrades are actual idiots. They are infuriating at times. Like, genuinely infuriating. But that's really about it.
Dad always said, if you want a job done right, you gotta do it yourself.
Now let's talk about level design. The game starts you off in these levels set in large, open Antarctic spaces with buildings and shacks spread throughout, and this is a nice little loop for the first few levels. It's fun to go building to building, and you get captured. And honestly, the first level where you go through the, capture lab isn't terrible, but god damn, those last 2 levels made me want to rip my hair out so much to the point I actually almost gave up on this game. I honestly was thinking about pitching this video completely. It was genuinely ridiculous how terrible some of these saves are on these last 2 levels. And the difficulty comes less from, how am I going to get through this? Let me think. And more, wow, thank you for giving me heals. That was awesome. And then you turn a corner, and there's 15 soldiers there just waiting to melt your health bar within a second. And some of these situations are genuinely just infuriating and shittily made, to be blunt. These last few levels feel so incredibly lazy. You're just thrown against a mountain of enemies, which wouldn't be very stressful if you weren't given heals so sporadically. And due to human enemies being thrown at you in such a massive amount, their guns melt you. Like, of course, you have to hide from a gun, hide behind cover. They don't present you great cover on these last missions. And it's irritating. And I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but it's just a little teensy-weensy bit annoying. I wish that these levels had focused a bit more on the horror aspect of the thing, and that some of these levels didn't suck so much ass. But the most egregious thing in this game's level design is not offering a save at the beginning of each level. Like, really? Really, dude? You're telling me that if I get off the game after I beat a level, I have to go back and play the last third of this other terrible level? And I mean, I was genuinely, like, having a gnarly crash out over this. I was angry to the point where I was like, wow, dude, I might actually give up on the game. For example, the second to last mission where before you do the last boss fight, I thought, okay, I'm getting too mad. I need to get off for the night. And then the realization hit me that I would have to play through the hell of the last level that I just spent 6 hours completing. It wasn't actually 6 hours, it was probably like 2, but still, ridiculous. Now, I understand I've been rambling about these last 2 levels a lot, but they genuinely almost made me quit the game, and it has been a long time since I've felt the need to be like, wow, dude, I might just pitch this. As for compliments to the level design, I do think those first couple levels before you're captured are pretty good, and they do capture the environment of being out in the Antarctic with aliens and it's all foggy all the time. I think they capture that well, and it was enjoyable to play through those, especially the first, like, probably 2 or 3 levels were really enjoyable. And I did enjoy my experience for probably the first 75% of the game. It's really just when you get captured that I think it goes downhill in the level design. And that's really about it. I've said my piece about it.
What the hell?
Oh, let's talk about the boss fights. Holy shit. What was that?
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
These were actually hell on earth. Oh, this is a tactical shooter. Let's throw you into some small-ass room with absolutely no dodge mechanic, and these bosses kill you in seconds if you don't have heals. Oh, and they just spam attacks. I cannot express how infuriating these bosses are. They are the least enjoyable part of this game. Anything I said about Concrete Jungle, the bosses in that game feel like master-crafted FromSoft bosses compared to this shit pot. Now, these would be different if there was any way to hide or evade or any kind of mechanic that wasn't just tank damage until you kill it. But that's simply not in this game's cards. I only beat these bosses, save for the last one, because it's a cinematic boss. I beat these literally just by cheesing the shit out of them. One of my biggest pet peeves in a game is god-awful bosses. Why even add them at all? Or why add bosses that don't suit the game's mechanics in the slightest? I genuinely was thinking about boxing my computer while playing these hogwash ass fests.
So what's your name, smartass?
McCready.
Let's talk about graphics. Yeah, they're pretty good. I would say they're pretty serviceable. I mean, the characters have some pretty silly facial animations. It's definitely like it's definitely old game facial animations. Everything else looks pretty decent. The monsters look good, which is the important part. And the end sequence is actually pretty good looking. I don't know why. I think it's a mix of the Blizzard, but yeah, that looked pretty good. I just think if this game, or I should say these characters, namely Blake, had a bit more character to him, and wasn't just a board, they maybe made him a bit more expressive, it would have elevated the game a bit. Now, I would also like to add that my game was choppy as hell. Do not play this game on Zemu if you're going to emulate it. PCSX2 is going to provide you with a much, much smoother experience. The graphics, I really don't have anything special to say about them. They weren't crazy, they weren't terrible. That's about it with those.
Fuck you too!
I don't really have any strong opinions towards most of this game. I know I went on like a 5-minute tangent about the bosses and the bad level design, but they were so bad that I had to talk about them. So those are my strongest opinions on this game. I also think the characters being about as personable as a board don't really get you all that connected to the story. And it doesn't really take the story of The Thing in a crazy direction. Oh, scientists are using it for experiments. Wow. Never seen that one before. Ever. In any sci-fi thing. Ever. And the gameplay is definitely the most fun part of the game. Not the bosses, though. Actually croak and die. But I wish that the game took more advantage of its more ambitious ideas and enforced them throughout the game more. That being said, I don't think I would list this game as a bad game. I wouldn't list this game as a great game. This game definitely feels pretty middle of the road. I would say on the better side. Now, if those last 2 levels had been changed drastically and the bosses were a bit more finely crafted and the gameplay was a bit more refined, I think this game would have been really solid. I mean, like, really great. I also think if they leaned a bit more into the horror aspect, that would have made this game pretty great too. But being as it is right now, I think it's a pretty decent game. I think it's definitely worth playing if you're a Thing fan, or just maybe watching a playthrough. And hopefully, when the remaster comes out, it's gonna be really good. Maybe they'll add some quality of life things to it. But that's really all about it. That's all I have to say about the game. I just want to take this little segment to appreciate you guys for watching, and I am excited to continue making videos. My next 2 are also going to be related to some sci-fi heavy hitters. And yeah, those will be out soon. Thank you guys for watching. That's really about it. Later.